Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar in which we're going to look at how we provide opportunities for assessment using G Suite. Welcome for those of us joining us again this week. As you might know, this is one of a series of webinars we're running every Tuesday at 3:30 UK time. And you can find out more details about all the webinars and watch any previous webinars back at the link there, bit.ly/GFE UK webinars. Also, all the resources from all the previous webinars, all the slide decks from the webinars, and any of the links we've talked about are available on our website at canopy.click/hybrid. And we do hope that you share some of these webinars and some of the resources with other teachers working in your school, as we're covering a range of topics over the previous weeks just gone and the weeks coming up. But today's webinar is all focused on assessment and how we can deliver assessment in the hybrid situation we find ourselves in right now. I'm joined today by Kat Lamin and Stephen Hope, both Google Certified Trainers and Google Certified Innovators from Sweden 19. And we're going to dig into different ways of assessing students' learning using G Suite and some of the tools that sit around G Suite as well. So we're going to start by being joined by Kat.
Hello.
Hi, Kat. And Kat, you're going to take us through Google Forms to start with.
I am. So hi, everyone. My name's Kat. I am an education consultant, which means that I get to support schools with their digital deployment and computer science and things like that. And I'm so lucky to be able to share with you Google Forms today because it's one of my favorite tools. Over the last few months, I've been doing a lot of training of schools and intros to G Suite training, and I always like to introduce Google Forms as this is your new favorite tool because you can do the self-marking quizzes. So I'm just going to talk you through a few of the features of Google Forms, particularly the self-marking quizzes, and give you some ideas for using it in the classroom. So I'm going to start off with a Google form here. You can all see, hopefully you can all see my screen. I've just got a very simple multiple choice question. And the first thing is, how do we turn it into a quiz? And that's where we need to click on this gear icon at the top, the settings icon. And you'll see there you've got three icons with quiz being the final one. And in order to make it a quiz, it's really, really simple. You just click over that tab. I'm going to talk through some of these other items in a moment, but for now, I'm just going to look at making a quiz. And then once I click save, what you'll notice is that on each question, you gain an answer key icon so that you can select the correct answer. I've got a little multiple choice question here that I pre-prepared. If anyone wants to have a guess at the answer in the chat, by all means do. It's a nice little maths problem from the primary maths challenge from a few years ago. So, nice, easy maths there as a multiple choice question. So in order to select the correct answer for my users, I've got 5 different options there. By clicking on the answer key icon, I can select the correct answer and I can also decide the points value. And it's really important that you give each question a point or the amount of points you want it to have so that students can get that sense of achievement at the end and know how many points they've earned. So this question is going to be worth 1 point. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to guess the answer, but the correct answer is impossible. And I might want to add the feedback of the current times add up to 2 hours already, or the current speed adds up, something along the lines of, so it's impossible. And that will give feedback, or I could even set a video to watch relating to the incorrect answer or give them a link to a new page. And I think that's really useful to be able to do that within a Google form. So there's my first question set up, nice and easy. Now, you may have noticed that when I went into the question, it was default set to 0 point. And a lot of teachers I find forget to put the point value in. So one top tip for you is that you can set it up so that it automatically sets to a default score value. Now, to do that, we click on the 3 dots and click on preferences. And within the 3 dots, we've got a default quiz point value. And I always say set that to 1 so that you know you've got at least 1 point per question. And it just means you're not going to accidentally have a 0 point question. And then if you do end up doing questions with more points, then you've got that option to upgrade it on each question. So that's just the default point value. It just means that for each question, it will default from now on to 1 point. Okay, so Those are that's my first few bits and pieces. So the next thing I want to look at, I've got a pre-prepared form here. So I'm just going to show you my general knowledge quiz. Now, if anyone wants to have a go at the general knowledge quiz, by all means, it can be found at canopy.click/quiz. And I'm just going to show you a few bits and pieces of behind the scenes once you've set your quiz question to your children. So I'm very lucky. I have some very kind friends who filled in my general knowledge quiz for me. And what I really like about doing a quiz is that you get lots of insight information behind the scenes. For example, I can see that the average score was 5 out of 8 points. I can see median and range there as well. I can see which question was frequently missed. So not a lot of people got the Toy Story film question correct. I can see that Rick did it twice because he put his name on it twice. Frederick there did it twice. And I've got all these graphs and information about each question. I can have a look at individual student responses. So let's have a look at what Abid did. Fortunately, he got the maths question correct. But more importantly, I can manually review question responses. So for example, one of my questions was a complete the song lyric. And I know that that's frequently marked as incorrect because different people spell it differently. So I can see here, this person, and this person spelt it as famdango instead of fandango. So do you know what? I'm going to change their score. I'm going to give them the point for that. And you'll notice at the bottom here, I've got edits are pending. Do I want to save or discard that? And obviously I want to save that I've gone in and I've corrected it afterwards. So that means that if you've got an open question in a literacy exam, for example, you can go through afterwards and manually review the responses. Because if I go back to the questions, you'll see that, for example, for that question on the song lyric, in my answer key, I've only got 2 correct answers, but I know that people might have spelt it incorrectly. And the way that Google Forms works when it's marking is it looks for a specific response. Now, one thing I find I'm often asked from primary school teachers that I work with is, my children did the quiz, they were really upset because they only got 5 out of 10, but actually, when I reviewed afterwards, they got 10 out of 10. It was just that the last few questions were open questions that I needed to mark. And so you get that sense of disappointment because they got their score immediately. Now, I mentioned earlier that there were some other options on the settings icon. So I'm just going to click on that again and show you. In the quizzes, you've got an option here to release the grade later. So that can be really useful to use if you're doing open-ended questions, if you're doing work around literacy or geography, where you might want a longer answer rather than just a 1-word or 2-word submission. So I would recommend using that manual review option to be able to give students their grade at a later point. You've also got options here around letting students see whether or not they've missed a question, telling them the correct answers at the end and showing them the point value. I know, for example, when I'm teaching maths, we frequently say to students, look at the points, see how much work you should be doing. So it can be really useful to say how many points you want to do. So I'm just going to save that one and give people the opportunity to receive their scores later. So that's really useful to do. And then, so I can also see now I've got 16 responses. The other thing that's really useful to know is that once you've got those scores, you can click on this green icon to get a sheet, to get a Google sheet of the scores, of the information, of the marks. You can plot graphs with that information. So I can see there I've got lots of people filled it in. I can scan quickly and see that people don't know the capital of New Zealand. And it's just really, really useful, really powerful. And that whole manual review thing works really well around ambiguous and open questions. So one of the other things I wanted to show you was around response validation as well. So if, for example, I've got another form here, you've got a checkbox question. So you can see here about Midsummer Night's Dream, who marries whom, because we know that it's an interesting love square in Midsummer Night's Dream with all the different couples. So for this question, I've got a checkbox question. And one of the settings down the bottom here is to allow response validation. And that means that I can say that I want my respondents to only select, for example, 2 options. So you can see here, select at most, and I can change on the drop-down menu. I want at least or exactly. So select at most 2 options, and then I can have an error message, please choose 2. And again, that just allows you a little bit more customization of your questions. And I find that really useful when you're doing those checkbox questions, so that you can do lots and lots of different question types, and you can specify choose 2, choose 3, and make sure that your students are actually following instructions. And the other useful thing, or the other interesting thing about this particular form, is that I've done something around differentiation. And so this is where we've got a Google form, and it's got a multiple choice question. And you can see here, I've made the question required, and I've clicked in this box, go to section based on answer. So if my respondent chooses the correct answer, they are directed to section 2. So they get the extension question. If they've chosen an incorrect answer, it sends them straight to section 3, where you'll find a video and the question is repeated. And you'll also see that at the end of section 2, I've told it to, after section 2, I've told it to submit the form rather than go to section 3. And then the other useful thing I've put on there is that I forgot to mention earlier. If you've got a multiple choice question, you've got this option down here to shuffle the option order. So it means you don't have to spend hours, which I used to agonize over, making sure that the answer isn't always the top one. You can put the answer as always the top one, and then it shuffles it automatically for you. So to go back to this, differentiation using sections is a really powerful way to extend your Google Forms and to make sure that your students are able to do more challenging question if necessary, or something easier, or have a bit more guidance and a bit more simple questions if they're finding it too difficult. So then the next thing I want to do is bring it round to setting a form via Google Classroom, because one of the things I absolutely love about assigning forms in Google Classroom is the fact that you can automatically import forms to your grade work. So if I go to my Google Classroom here and click on classwork, I can very easily create a quiz, but I have to make sure I select quiz assignment. And this is often where people fall, is that they don't select quiz assignment. And when you select quiz assignment, you'll see it automatically generates a blank Google form. And what you'll need to do is, if you've already pre-created your form, you need to add that from the Google Drive. So hopefully my general knowledge form is in. Yeah, there we go. There we go. There's my general knowledge form. I can add that, and you'll notice that grade importing down here has grade over. And that's because at the moment I have 2 forms, and it can't import grades from 2 forms at once. So you have to make sure you get rid of that blank one, and immediately grade importing will come back as a blue option there. And as you would with any normal assignment, you can just say general knowledge quiz, and decide your topics, due dates, all the usual things you would do in a Google Classroom, and assign that. And then once you've assigned it, when you go to your grade book, you will see you've got the general knowledge. Oh, sorry, I've not been to the grade book on this account. You've got your general knowledge quiz in there. And up here, I've got the option to import grades. Now, none of my students have actually done the quiz at the moment. So if I import the grades, it's going to give them all a nice 0. But I'll just show you, if you click on that one, it will say, are you sure? Because it overwrites grades and it imports them. The nice thing about importing grades is that once you've gone through and manually corrected your scores, you can re-import them and it will update the scores in the gradebook. So if you click on that one again, it will update the scores after you've had a chance to go through and look at those ones that you had to manually review. So that can be really, really useful. So I'm going to finish talking about Google Forms there, but hopefully that was a useful bit of information about using Google Forms for assessment. And I'm just going to briefly touch on marking rubrics. And marking rubrics, I've found certainly with the UK audience, is one that teachers aren't particularly using. And part of that, I think, is a linguistic thing, because in the UK, we don't call them marking rubrics. We tend to call them mark schemes or assessment checklists. But the idea of a marking rubric is that you've got something that the students can look at and follow along with. So if I just have a look at this Harry Potter assignment there, and look at the instructions, you'll see that there is a rubric attached to that particular activity. And this rubric has been split into 2 sections. So this is a primary level activity around capital letters and full stops. So you'll see there, I've just put 2 different marking rubrics with 3 points values within it. So the students see that as their option. If I go on to and switch over here to my student view, so this is a student in the same classroom. If I click on that Harry Potter assignment, I can see there, look, we can have a look at the information. I can also have a look at whether or not I've been given any points to do with it. So as a student, I can see what my teacher is looking for. So if I go back to the teacher view there, in fact, I'm just going to hand in that one. So this one, Stuart R is turning in his work. We discovered the other day that it depends if you're set to English, American English or UK English, whether or not you see hand in or turn in. So just a useful bit of trivia there for you. So if I go back to this assignment as a teacher and look at my classwork, look at that particular activity, if I view the assignment, I can see that, oh, it didn't hand in. I know that Stuart's handed it in and I can give him a grade. So I can say, okay, he's got 3 out of 3 on the capital letters and 2 out of 3 on the punctuation because he missed a couple of those full stops. And that makes life easier for me as a teacher, just being able to select those boxes depending on my rubric levels I've put in. So I'm just going to show you how to create a rubric as well, just so you know. So when you go to create your lesson, you create an assignment or a quiz assignment as normal, give it a name. Oh, I can't type today. Assignment. And if I click down here, so I can add a rubric. So you can either create a rubric, very, very simple. You need to give each criteria a title. So for example, I had punctuation and spelling, punctuation and capital letters in the previous one. So the title defines the section of the rubric. So again, I'll just go for punctuation because my brain has gone blank on what else I can use. And then if you want to put some descriptions, you can. And then obviously within each rubric itself, you have the different levels. So if I go back here, you can see I went for capital letters, advanced, intermediate and beginner, and then just put a little descriptor for each one. And I know that, for example, with Key Stage 2, a lot of teachers give students the marking rubric, the mark scheme for example, for Key Stage 2 SAT, so that they know what's being looked for and they can work to it. I know in secondary schools, we work towards the GCSE specifications and tend to, for example, in English, have a lot of the same background information for each assignment. So you can have that rubric running for each lesson. So what's really nice with a rubric, I'm just going to discard this one, is that you can reuse them. So if you've got one you've created, you can just click reuse and you can find the lesson that it's relating to and select it. Or what you can do is export it as a Google Sheet and then import it. So I've got my marking rubric there. You can see there I've got exercise rubric, and if I click add on that one, it comes up with the rubric that I used for my Harry Potter activity there. So that means you can easily share rubrics with colleagues who are in different classes. And so, yeah, rubrics are a really, really useful tool, and a lot of schools just aren't using them at the moment. So I would definitely recommend exploring them and having a look at using them for assessment. I think that's me for now. So thank you very much for listening. Sorry, it's gone very dark in my room.
Thank you, Kat. Great tips there on both forms and rubrics. So thank you for taking us through those. A couple of different questions came up in the chat as you went through. I don't know if we can get them on screen. I know that Katie had a question where she asked earlier on about whether the forms was case sensitive.
Yes. So when you're doing your mark scheme for Google Form, it is case sensitive. So you have to think through some of the different iterations of answers. So again, if I go back to that general knowledge quiz and go back to the question, you'll see that I've put in the Fandango one, the 2 different correct spellings with a capital letter and a lowercase. So yes, it is case sensitive, and you do have to be conscious of the different case different options for how you would spell it correctly.
And then Orna asked a question, quite a big question this, about a glitch with Google Forms where some questions were marked correct, but were shown as red for the students, which they didn't like. And was it a glitch? So 2 parts to this. I can take this one. So it might be a glitch, and don't forget that you can always, if you're an administrator on a Google for Education domain, you can always open a support ticket by going to the admin console. So that's one option. It could be a glitch. The second thing it could be is to do with the question choice, particularly around the multiple choice questions versus tick box questions. So we bring my screen. I was going to talk about that a little bit because on my screen there, as you can see, I've got a question there where I've got please select one, and I've got 1, 2, 3, just some example answers, just an example question. As you can see in the marks team, I can make more than one the correct answer. So in this one, I've made 2 and 3, both correct answers. Now, to get the points, although they could select one or the other, to get 10 points, they have to select both of them. So if you use, if you are using the quizzes and you've got using checkboxes, so you want to have more than one correct answer within a list of points, then they have to get the exact match to score the points. Otherwise, it scores them 0. So they can technically, you could technically answer that and pick 3, but you're not going to score the 10 points because you've got to select 2 and 3 to score the points on that. There is, however, a workaround for this, and I put the workaround down below here, which is we can break our question down into what, in theory, is separate questions in a Google form. So what we've got here is a Google form. We've got please select 1, we've got 1, 2, 3, and as you can see, they're actually separate questions. And one of the advantages of doing it this way, although it looks strange for us when we see it this way in this form, when our viewers view the form, they just see that text and then the options. They don't see question. They just see 1, 2, and 3 as tick boxes again. And the advantage is, one, we can have obviously multiple variations of them being marked correct. So if they click one that is correct, they can score points. But we can also have different points for each of the answers because the Google Forms see each of them as a separate answer. We can then have, maybe one of us has 5 points for picking 2 and 10 points for picking 3. We can do it that way as well. So that's a bit of a workaround. If you're trying to use the checkbox question, but you want to do something a bit more complicated, or maybe vary the number of points versus the answers. And so set it out that way. When they view the form, they obviously don't see anything between because that question area is blank. I've just left the question there blank, so they just see 2 and a tick box, 3 and a tick box, and so on. It looks much better. So that's just some tips that might help you if you're using forms in that way.
I've just seen a new question, Andy, about Equatio with Google Forms, because you've obviously got your extension on. Just for reference, it's actually automatic. So if you've got Equatio, if you go into Google Forms, you'll see it appears on the side once Equatio is open. So it does work natively.
We can probably pop my screen at this point, can't we, as I've got it on already. We could see I had it on because over on the right-hand side there in my Google form, we've got these Equatio buttons hanging all over the place. So Equatio, for anyone who hasn't seen us, is a Chrome extension, and it allows us to add equations in wherever we want to put them into a Google Doc, a Google form, into Google Slides. And so particularly if you're teaching maths or you're teaching any subject like I used to, like geography with an element of formulas, it's a really useful Chrome extension to be able to use. So if I wanted my question here to be an equation, I can just press the Insert Maths button there. And what will happen then is Equatio will load up down the bottom of my screen. And I might just sign in again because I haven't used it in a while. But we'll just get that signing in. And then what this will allow me to do here at the bottom is it will allow me to put my equation in. And I can use that using the voice. I can use the handwriting recognition, or I can use the keyboard to put my formulas in. So I'm going to do handwriting recognition today. I happen to be on a device which is touchscreen, so I can just draw in the sum of sigma over pi. This is not great drawing. Let's see how well it recognises that. Well, it got N at the bottom. It got close. It got close with the recognition of my handwriting. So as you can see, it's put the maths on the right there. It's turned that into a formula which I could then use, and I then press Insert Math, and that then effectively puts it in as an image. So it puts that into my quiz here, so that maths is now there in the quiz. So Equatio embeds really nicely inside Google Forms. And if you're a maths teacher or using formulas, it's a great tool to use.
So there was one other thing I forgot to mention is there's a sort of misunderstanding, and Andy and I were talking about this last night, with multiple choice forms, that they're always too easy. I think it's more down to the question you're asking, because I've seen a lot of really difficult questions delivered via Google Forms. In fact, I know at the moment the independent schools are doing their 11 plus exams all via multiple choice, and they're still able to select students for their 11 plus entry.
Yeah, and I would say to think about things like sequential ordering in forms. So often, rather than, we often think about forms being used for knowledge, just asking, what is this? And then there's a choice of four things where three of them are ridiculous and one is the correct answer. But actually, we can ask things like, as a geographer, we might ask people to put different types of erosion in a particular order that they take place in downstream. And that's going to require quite a bit of detailed knowledge, because you're going to have to understand where the river is in terms of the stream, what the different types of erosion are, to be able to pick the correct order. And if you just put all random orders in there, then that involves a lot more of an understanding of the processes that are going on. So it is possible to create quite in-depth questions that are still multiple choice in their style. So it is worth thinking about that.
It's one of the reasons I chose that math challenge question, because the math challenge is mostly multiple choice, and some of the questions are incredibly difficult, even at primary level.
Yeah, because I was very close to typing 12. Thank you, Kat, for taking us through forms.
No problem.
Stephen's going to join us now. Hi, Stephen.
Hi there, you all right?
Yeah, good, thanks. And you're going to talk about both Jamboard and Edpuzzle.
Yes, I think I am. Well, I definitely am. So I'm going to go through the process of what Google Jamboard actually is. So I've already preset one. I'm going to walk you through the features, which I've laid out on the first slide, or the first frame, as it's called. First thing, head to jamboard.google.com, or you can open it up directly from your drive. Everything in Google Jamboard is saved to your drive automatically, as with all core G Suite tools. So just going to walk you through what the key features are, and just remember that there are actually different variations and versions of a Jamboard. So I'm going to show you it on a PC or a normal device, and the reason I'm going to do that is because that's standard in schools. So I don't want to show you something on an app or a Play Store enabled Chromebook that you might not be potentially be able to use in your school or college. So we've got the handwrite recognition. So again, this is a Play Store tool. On the actual PC version or the web version, you don't have the ability to do the handwrite recognition. So what I get the teacher and the students to do is go through a process of downloading the app onto their Android or iOS device. So you've got different variations in regards to the pen and the different colors. You have an eraser, but I think it's key in terms of assessment, and so many teachers that I've spoken to, is around the sticky notes. So you've got a variation in regards to a plethora of different color sticky notes. So during COVID and the hybrid and the blended learning and the face-to-face learning that we're doing, what's brilliant is being able to get students to use Post-it notes when you can't be handing them out as a teacher. So there isn't absolutely loads of colors, but there's a nice range of 5 and then a clear one. So you can go through the process, and I'm going to show how to use these in a short while. You then have the ability to add an image. Down this side, you can do that from uploading it from your drive, the photos, or a normal Google search. You can add shapes, a text box, or a highlighter in terms of a laser. So again, you've got the handwrite recognition, you've got some lovely sticky notes. And remember, in terms of the Jam, you can have up to 50 students or staff collaborating from anywhere on any device. So that's absolutely key during hybrid and blended learning. So you could have some students all in a class at the same time on Chromebooks and their devices. You can have some students in the class and some students at home, or you can have completely online where students are all doing this synchronously at their own pace. The shape recognition is fantastic in regards to the ability to start to be a bit more creative in terms of your Jam. And again, it works on the board itself, the app, or the browser. If you're using it on the board itself, you can actually have the auto draw feature, which has been fantastic and great for our foundation studies, so our SEND students. And then you have the ability to start to search directly from the web or photos, you can crop those in and bring them in. So I'm going to walk through how I'd use that for assessment. What's really, really great in regards to the app is starting to provide picture feedback. So when we started to assess and provide feedback to our students, often as a teacher, we start to find many, many different ways of how we can provide the same phraseology to our students. So we're talking about good work, good answer, and so on and so on. That actually a tick or a thumbs up or a cross and a thumbs down will probably answer in exactly the same way. And then it's going over and above in regards to the assessment and the feedback around misconceptions and starting to speak verbally to students, or more detail in regards to a post-it note or using the text box. You can upload files from your device. So again, Android or Apple devices. So you can upload slides, PDFs and docs. But also what's fantastic is students can create GIFs. So using Screencastify or a GIF creator, save that to their Google Drive and then upload that in regards to providing some evidence. I don't know why I picked a dog riding on the back of a horse. Don't ask me why, but I thought it'd be funny. So that's the one I've shared with you. What you also have is the ability to set backgrounds. So you can go in, you can change that to be completely clear. Dots, lines, squares, blue, or black. So I'm going to change that back to lines. Now I'm going to walk you through the process in regards to what that might look like in terms of assessment of students. So just a couple of examples of things that I've seen work really, really well. So don't forget, what you can do is you can either share using a link, a jam that you've created with the students collectively. So if you're thinking of a collective of students, a group of 4, you can create them as a whole class in regards to the feedback and active learning. So what I mean by active is you've been delivering some instruction, both face-to-face or online. Using Google Meet, you can now create a jam using the whiteboard and the 3 dots in the bottom right corner. You can then get all of the students on and you can ask a question and get the students to respond back to you. Really, really simple, rather than just basic question and answer. But what I've done here is I've thrown a question to some students in regards to what active learning looks like. I've then just gone through a process of what I want them to do as an individual. So I've just gone in and I'm going to get you to what that looks like. So I'm just going to create this for you and show you how I would do this. So first and foremost, just using the sticky notes, I'm going to post a question. In terms of assessment, you can just leave it at that. A real simple starter entry ticket, exit ticket, or progress check, where you just ask a group of students, the whole class, or an individual student, what is your in terms of what you're learning. But if you want to be a bit more creative, what you can then start to do is start to add different sections to the jam of what you want the students to do. So a bit more scaffolding. And again, when you're scaffolding, doesn't have to mean that you're actually giving them more support. You can just frame it, the questions a little differently and get them to walk through the process of how difficult you want or where you want to get them by the end. And all I'm going to do is then I'm just going to add text box. And very, very simply, you've got a really nice way that you can just get students to go through a process in regards to their learning. If you want to make it so they're actually following a certain path, you can then add in the arrows of which ones you want them to complete. And spin those around so they're following the right path. Or you can just say, I'm going to give you 10 minutes and I want you to complete each element. You can also then just leave it completely blank and say, based on where you think you're at, I want you to be able to define it, I want you to provide examples, or I want you to straight away go into the evaluation and actually just give them a short period of time to go through that process. So really, really nice way that you can start to frame the learning process around one question, really, really quick to do. And it's just a nice way to engage and get the students to be active in their learning rather than just being passive, especially when you're delivering a hybrid or online model. What I've also done is show you how you can do some quick assessments of groups. So again, I've just used the sticky notes. So I've just created one per group, and then using my great ability to try and draw a straight line, I've just used the drawing tab to try and identify. So group one, as a collective, the 4 students that are in group 1 would then go through in the using the yellow post-it note and add as many benefits of online learning as they can. In this chart, group 2, you can then add using the green, group 3, group 4. A lot of teachers are then saying, well, actually, I don't want them to be able to see each other's work. So what I would then do is I would just create one and just put benefits of online learning with just one frame on it. I would then go into Google Classroom, create an assignment, and just assign and make a copy per student or per group. So use a differentiation tab to assign based on the groups. It's a great way that actually then students can only see what their group is doing at that time, and then the teacher would then start to walk through the process and share those answers back. I think it depends on the type of students and the context of your learners. I think what is key here is you know your learners better than anybody. You know whether you want them to be able to collaborate and share ideas in terms of the learning journey, or whether you want them to start to just work in a silo of one group. I love the shift and draw line thing. Love a straight line. I know, Mel, I'm not too fussy in terms of a straight line. That's probably as straight as I'll get it normally in terms of even my learning looks a bit wonky as I go through a process. What I've also done is just a great starter activity. So again, just rate your knowledge of blended learning when students come into the session. So all I'd ask them to do is pick a sticky note, add their name onto it, and then all I would get them to do is just put where they think in terms of when they first start. You can then just do a real nice temperature check of their starting point at the beginning of that lesson based on the subject that you're going to be covering. What's really, really great is to save yourself some time. What you can then do is I'm going to use this same one, and I'm going to drop that down. Using the 3 dots at the top, I'm going to duplicate that. I'm then going to quickly go on. And I'm now going to just quickly change this. So rather than an entry or a starter, I'm going to flip it up. And now you've got a lovely starter that I've created in seconds. I've now done an exit ticket as well. So at the beginning, the students would then put on. So going back to that frame, you've got all the students' temperature checks in regards to where they were at the beginning of the lesson. Now, when they move through the frames, you can then see an exit where you can then go back. And again, students would do exactly the same process. And then students would go in and then put themselves in regards to the scale of where they're actually now at the end of the session. A great way that you can actually check progress as you go through the session. Then got just a simple activity where, as an individual, what I want the students to be able to do is just analyse the impact of blended learning on the English education system. We won't go there on the call because it could take the rest and could take us all the way up to past, because I don't know what your feelings, but everybody, it's very polarising. Everybody has a positive or negative to say. But I want the students to analyse what their view of the of blended learning and the impact it could have. So students have the tools if they've got a phone or they've got a stylus-enabled Chromebook, they could then write over the top. They can just simply, if they're just on the web version, pull loads of different sticky notes in and just put loads of bits in. They can just write reams, and add a little bit more in terms of a longer sentence. Or they can be really, really creative and start to add creative elements to their jam. And all you've given them is a real simple 5-second template of asking one question. What the students can then be is as creative as they want to be by adding images. They can then go onto their phone and upload from their drive slides, presentations that they've created, PDFs, docs, and pull in lots of different variations using a lot of different mediums in regards to providing feedback based on analysing the impact of blended learning. You could do that in a doc, but what we're finding is students just respond. So think about the choice that you're giving your learners depending on their age. At the beginning, normally what you might do is, I want you to write a report that analyses the impact. That actually by, on Google Classroom, just saying, you can do this in any way that you want, that students might start to choose Jam as their approach for actually completing work. That they're still analysing, and they're bringing lots of different variations with regards to their learning and their knowledge and starting to build a portfolio of evidence all in one Jam, which is really, really key. We've seen a lot of students doing that for creative arts and those kind of subjects, as well as for coding and for gaming. So just to cover and go back, showing you how to create a quick template, simple question, but then start to scaffold and allow students to be going through a process of defining, providing examples, and then a bit more of an evaluation. If they get to that point, the teacher can then jump onto the Jam, start to provide feedback and support. Great way that you can do group assessments and feedback. So break it down into lines and assign each group a different colour. Nice way that you can create entry and exit tickets by just, again, a rating, simple lines, and then the scales either side, and then just getting students to create the sticky notes and add where they feel they are in terms of their knowledge at that point when they come into the lesson. So starting point, and then how you can then just flip that really, really quickly, change it from an exit, from an entry ticket to an exit, remove all of the different names, and then quickly just get the students to rate themselves again in terms of their learning at the end of the session. So a bit of a temperature check. And then the last one was around just an open question around analysis and just asking the students to be as creative as they want to be. They can do that in text boxes, they can do that in sticky notes, or they can really start to throw different means of pictures, web pages, slides, and so many different ways to evidence what they've learned. So that's Jam and Google Jamboard. Now I'm going to show you Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle is a really great way for hybrid learning for assessments, both in the classroom, online, and as an extension activity away from the classroom, depending on the levels. So I've signed in. So you signed in using your Google credentials. For the first time, you have to put some input in regards to the type of students you've got and the subject that you normally teach. But then you'd land on the content page. There is a free plan, and then there's a premium version. I'm just using the free version. You then have, because you assign which college or school that you're attached to, all the different content that's been assigned and created within your organization. You then have by the curriculum that you've identified or the content that you've already created. You have a great way that you can pull off, and you've got loads of channels. And this, as Edpuzzle, is around video assessments. So videos that you've created are already existing from Edpuzzle in regards to their library, YouTube, Khan Academy, National Geographic, TED Talks, and many, many more. So I'm just going to show you how you would just normally do that. So I'm going to go on to one that I've already created. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this. Go back actually and do it again. Okay, so I've now got the blank video. It's already got the questions on there. So what I can do is I'm going to go into edit. So what's great about Edpuzzle is you can create your own content. You can find a video that has no questions or nothing attached to it already. But if you're already wanting to not reinvent the wheel and you're busy as a teacher, what's fantastic is you can then go in and edit and make a copy of what somebody's already done. So you can cut the video. So you can then start to shift the video so that actually it's the length of the video that you want for your students. That Sir Ken Robinson might last 20 minutes, but what I want is I only want to show the first 10 minutes because that's relevant to my students. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to drop questions in because I want the students to watch the video as an activity, but I also want to know that they've learned and they've actually tested their knowledge during the video check. So you can add different variations, so multiple choice question, open-ended question, or a note. So I'm going to add a question based on this time of the video. I'm then going to ask a question of, actually I should have changed that. That's an open-ended question. And save. And I'm going to add another question in terms of multiple choice. And again, if you need to just identify which is correct and which is not correct. What I'm then going to do, I'm going to finish. And then I'm going to assign. So you can then create different classes. So I've already created one called test one for today. I'm going to assign when this is due out and when it's due in. So I'm giving my students a week to watch that asynchronously because it's based on the activity and the knowledge that we've delivered today. You can also put the hour and the minute in. And what's key in regards to delivery is if you want students to be able to skip the video or not skip the video, it depends on the context and also what your learners are like. Do you want to be able to get them to where they have to watch all of the video before they answer the questions? Or are you happy that as they skip through, they can just go to the questions if they already know it? It's entirely up to you whether this is a learning process or whether this is an assessment process for your learners based on knowledge already presented. You can then turn on closed captions. And I'm then going to assign. You can go live with your students so their students can, it's where you share it and the students can go through and they edit and they can actually all go through the process at the same time. I'm not going to do that. And I'm then going to go in and watch back. And because because I've now turned closed captions on, this is really key for accessibility. That I'm going to turn it on and I'm going to identify the language that I want closed captions on. And now what will happen is when I play the video back, and that's really, really key for students that are partially hard of hearing or have hearing impairments, but also depends on when you want your students to access the learning. So students might not have headphones in class. If you've got them all listening to the video, it can be very, very noisy. So a lot of our staff just turn the closed captions on and the students can watch the video, but won't necessarily listen to it. What you also have is students can then watch it back on the bus when they don't have headphones, so they can watch along, reading the closed captions rather than actually listening to the video. And a lot of our students have said, always ensure that we turn the closed captions on again, which is key as well. So that's Edpuzzle. There is a grade book, and you can assign it to class and everything else, but that's for another day. I just wanted to show you how you could then start to find video content that is already existing, questions that are already there and sessions that are already prepped, but also how you can then start to think about, again, exit and entry tickets, progress checks, all using videos where you can drop different types of assessment in regards to multiple choice and open questions. You can also add notes where students have to answer those questions before they can move on to the next bit. What that then pulls through is to the gradebook, where you can see all of the students' classes and all of the feedback, and you can actually look at the misconceptions and how students are progressing in their learning outside of the classroom, so you can then tailor your support ready for the students. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And say thank you very much for listening.
Steve, thank you very much. Some great tips there on both using Jamboard as an assessment tool, and we're massively seeing the growth of Jamboard across a range of schools because of that versatility of the space. And then obviously Edpuzzle, which again was a lot of love for. We have said throughout this webinar, if you've got any questions, you can pop them in the chat. I don't think there's any questions come in. We had a few on forums, but none in your section so far, Steve, so you might be scared of questions. But just whilst people put their questions in, don't forget that all the resources from today are available at canopy.click/hybrid. I forgot that for one moment there, where you can watch the previous sessions and also the resources that are shared from today's webinar. And finally, don't forget that we are collecting feedback from all of the webinars we're delivering. So the link is there on the screen. We'll pop that in the chat as well. It would be great if you could go over to our Google form and give us some feedback on today's session. All that leaves me to do otherwise is to thank Steve and Kat as well for joining us today. I don't think we have any further questions coming in. So we will thank everybody for joining us. Don't forget, we're back next week at 3:30 for one of our final webinars in the series of hybrid learning webinars. Otherwise, thank you all for joining us and see you all soon.